Hello, everyone. This is the Thriving Immigrant podcast, and this is Paul Adeyeye. If you are tuning in for the first time, I want to say thank you and welcome. You are in the right place. And for if you are tuning in, if you've been following me and you've been listening, thank you so much for subscribing and thank you for tuning in again. I'm really excited about today's conversation. My guest is Abel. So, Abel moved to Canada several years ago. So Abel is not a typical immigrant. His parents moved to Canada from Philippines and he came here as a kid and he has done so well for himself. I'm looking at Abel now. I don't know his age, but it looks like he's been here for decades. Interestingly, Abel had his education in Canada, started his career in Canada, did very well in his career for over 20 years, decided to pivot into entrepreneurship. And at some point, he realized the importance of helping people. He became very passionate about helping people and he wanted to help immigrants because it's one thing to learn in Canada, it's another thing to establish yourself and thrive in Canada. So he decided to start RISEC Community Foundation. It's a non-profit organization, and I'm so thrilled and inspired by what Abel and his team are building, helping immigrants to settle in Canada. So join me in welcoming Abel to the Thriving Immigrant podcast. Hi, Abel. Welcome to the Thriving Immigrant podcast.
Thank you, Paul, and it's an honor to be in your show. Thank you so much for inviting me into the Thriving Immigrant program.
Awesome. So I'm really glad to have you here. And just to kick the conversation, to start the conversation, I know you are not a typical immigrant. And do you want to tell us a little bit about your immigration journey?
Absolutely. So my parents came from the Philippines, and it was actually my mom that came to Canada first back in 92, 1990. Well, she came to Canada earlier than that. She was actually from Hong Kong. She immigrated to Hong Kong first, and then from Hong Kong, she immigrated to Canada in I believe 1989, 1990. And then 2 years after, she brought in my dad and then myself. And so I pretty much grew up here since the 92. I've seen Calgary grow from just a small North American city to a major city that it is now. I've seen it become very multicultural, very welcoming, and a very vibrant city. And I've seen it become an economic powerhouse in many respects, not just in the oil and gas industry, but also in banking and finance. And I've seen the good and the bad, and I still continue to love it. My kids are born here in Calgary, and we're making our living here. And so that's, in a nutshell, that's my immigrant story, starting out at 12, when I was 12 years old, coming to Canada, and then just pretty much spending my youth here and my adult life here.
Oh, beautiful. So I'm sure you have different perspective from the you have a very different perspective from the typical immigrant. So you are a second generation immigrant. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So my perspective is somewhat very different than those who have just recently arrived. Because back then there wasn't a whole lot of immigrants here in Calgary. I was the first Filipino in my junior high school,
Hmm.
and I was treated very well. I was welcomed. Uh, I almost, I always joke. I say I was treated like an exotic pet, something that they haven't seen in a while. And it was that kind of environment that I experienced firsthand, where Canadians really opened their arms and helped me and helped my family thrive here in Canada, and just really have the support that we needed. So we didn't have a lot of the services back then that are offered to immigrants now. So we had to learn to do things on our own, but it wasn't that difficult because we had the church. The church was a big anchor for us. The church welcomed us. Any church here in Calgary welcomed us, and they were very supportive. We got our first furniture from the church. We got our first cutleries, family cutleries. Even a church member uh, helped us find apartments for us. So church played a big thing
Hmm.
played a big role in us getting established here in Canada because we didn't have all the immigrant services back then.
Yeah, that's interesting because even as at the time I came to Canada, there were churches that were also providing support. But one thing I think is different is beyond churches, we have other agencies that are trying to make it easy for immigrants to settle in Canada, and you are also one of such. We are going to talk about that shortly. All right, thank you for sharing that. In your case, you've done more than 2 decades in the professional space, you've worked with different organizations. How do you think that the Canadian workspace, how has it evolved over the years?
Right. So I think it evolved three ways, and this is just my observation. Of course, there's no studies on this. The first thing that you'll notice in the Canadian workplace, especially here in Calgary, and it's probably true in most major Canadian cities, is that it's very multicultural now. Right? Before the workspace, when I started, I was one of the few visible minorities, although I did not experience any discrimination. Like I said, Canadians are very welcoming. I fit in. It also helped that I grew up here, so a lot of my friends and best friends and people that I play sports with are Canadians. But nowadays it's very multicultural, and
Mm,
there's a lot more cultural events that are happening. There's a lot more cultural celebrations, which is great. The second thing that I've noticed, now this could be good or bad, is that the service industry, particularly the front-facing service industries like staff at Tim Hortons and Walmart, where we go, they have become very much multicultural as well, and in some cases, very rare to see Caucasians working in those industries, which is you could say that's good, but at the same time, I don't know how that will impact us down the road. It could be good, it could be
mm,
bad, but it is giving a lot of opportunities to newcomers, which is amazing. These companies are a lifeline for many of them, especially as they are getting started. And the third one that I've noticed is there's a lot more support for new immigrants, and this is what I discussed earlier. In the workplace now, it's not uncommon to see it's not uncommon to see courses on multiculturalism or inclusiveness or in respect, which is great because if we didn't have those, there'd be a lot more misunderstanding in the Canadian workplace. But I think one of the great things about our country, Canada, is that we really value human rights and we
mm,
value people, and you see that in companies. They do spend time on that. They do invest time in getting to know each other through cultural events or even just doing cultural inclusiveness courses to help people who are here to help us understand other cultures that we work with. So I think those are the three main things that that I've noticed.
Thank you. You made those 3 points are very valid. And I just want to take you back to the second point, talking about how immigrants are dominating the service industry. I don't know if that's the right word, but I love the word you use, that multicultural. And I know you're trying to be diplomatic here. Like, is it good? Is it bad? Do you think it's concerning seeing that we rarely see Caucasians working in those organizations, as in the front, the service providers? So is it because those jobs are quote and unquote not well paying, or do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, again, my opinion, they're not done with any study whatsoever. This is my observation, so please don't, for any of your listeners, I hope they don't take this in the wrong way. I just have a couple of points on that. I think in terms of is it good, I believe it's good at the beginning. Definitely, it does help newcomers get established. It gives them that lifeline, and it's good too for our economy because when you have newcomers and they're not working, somebody has got to
To do the
give
job.
them something. Something has got to help them out, and that usually falls into the government, which means tax for us, or which means our tax money goes there. Now, when immigrants arrive to Canada, if you can get them to a job within a month, they start paying taxes, and that's good for us. That's good for my healthcare. That's good for you. The moment that becomes a problem, then we now have to take from our tax, right?
Hmm.
And then we now have to support them. This is why the refugee issue is a very important issue, because a lot of the times when they come here, we have to support them, and that means thousands of dollars of support each month for every single family,
Hmm.
which means we're paying for that. However, with if we can give them a quick job right away, such as in the retail or customer service job, then they have money. They don't need to rely on our government services, which means we save money on taxes. So in a way, that's a good thing, Paul. Now, it can also be a negative because, and again, I'm just gonna be transparent and just be honest with what I see here in Calgary, especially here in Calgary inner city, because we live in the inner city in downtown core. I've seen an increase in homelessness,
Hmm.
and a lot of them, I would say, and I guess I don't know how to be careful with this, but a lot of them I would say are primarily Caucasians. So,
Hmm.
is that the impact of them not being able to attain the jobs that newcomers are now taking over or immigrants are taking over? Uh, I don't know. I think a study has to be done on that. That's just my assumption. Again, I don't have any studies backing that, but that's my observation. And when you have when you have newcomers who are hungry, who want to do the job, who want to really make money, and they will take and do anything or any job that's available, then that will displace some people. And
Yeah.
I would say that will displace not just the Caucasians, but those who have already been here, like myself, who grew up here, because now we're competing with someone who will say, okay, I'll take the minimum wage, I'll work,
He's
work the extra
hungrier.
hours, and so on. So on the business perspective, it makes sense. If I was a business owner and I would say, okay, I have somebody who's more qualified from their home country, and
Hmm.
then somebody here who's just starting out, let's say a youth who just graduated from college, but this individual has all these other skill sets that I don't have to train them on, I don't have to pay for. uh, who do I pick? Do I pick the one who's recently graduated? Doesn't matter if they're Caucasian or Asian, like, but if they just recently graduated, or somebody who arrived last month, who is fresh off an office work or a job and has all the skills, has all the MBAs, have all the credentials, knows all the tools, and I'm paying basically the starting rate,
Hmm.
and I know that I'm gonna get so much more out of
Value.
this individual because of their experience. And if you run a business, you know that experience is really what you want to pay for, right? Not so much, and anybody can have a lot of education, but without the experience, being able to do things and having the awareness of what it is that they're doing or what they want to contribute, it doesn't really matter. So you want to pay for that. And so, to me, is it a good thing that newcomers are getting the jobs? I think it's great. Like I said, that there is benefits to that, but at the same time, I don't know if us who are in here have grew up here, Caucasians, or it doesn't matter what ethnic group. If you grew up here, second generation Canadian, are we prepared to handle that? Are we prepared to transition?
Hmm.
And so it's like I said, it's really
It's
difficult
tricky.
to. It is tricky because on one hand you're benefiting,
Yeah.
but on the other end something has got to give, right?
Yeah. And I kind of understand what you're trying to say, and I don't want to dwell so much on this topic because you made a point about immigrants who have gathered a lot of experience finally come here, and as a business owner you feel like, oh, this guy has more value. That also may look like a system that is taking advantage of highly skilled people and not paying them what they deserve. And as a new immigrant, you might find yourself in a desperate position and you're just looking for any job, regardless of the qualifications that you have. So some people may not see that as a positive thing. And because at least for me, I'm still, I would say, I can't compare myself to you. I'm still relatively new in Canada compared to how long you've spent in the country. So, but that's fine. We can move to another to another
Yeah.
topic.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. I don't think it's a clear-cut solution.
Hmm.
I think it is a solution on both sides, and there is a solution on the issues that it brings about. I do think though that we're not moving too fast on it, and this is why we have organizations such as ours, which we'll discuss. So.
Yeah. So you founded RISEC, and I could tell from the first conversation we had, I could see your passion for immigrants, and that is quite inspiring because in your own case, you are not a typical immigrant, so you don't really understand our struggle. Because I believe you will agree with me that you enjoyed some privileges because you are not a typical first generation immigrant. But that didn't stop you from expressing your passion to support immigrants, and you created or you started RISEC. So do you want to speak a little bit about what inspired you and what RISEC is about?
Yeah, so RISEC is an acronym for Refugee Immigrant Settlement Education and Career, and it was founded in March of last year, 2024. But the work behind that has been ongoing since I would say 2021, when my wife started an international student placement program where we bring in international students and put them to colleges here in Canada. Not just international students, but also Canadian students, those especially those who recently arrived to Canada, who are looking to get their diploma and increase their education background, or improve their education background. So we formalized it in 2024 of March last year. And the mission of RISEC really is to help newcomers, immigrants, refugees, and immigrants, which are newcomers basically, in those three key pillars, as we call it: the settlement, education, and career. Because we all know that a good settlement is vital to thriving in Canada. There has to be that good experience, and that's what we bring in as immigrants, as well as my family, my family background being an immigrant from the Philippines. We've had a really good settlement experience, and I believe that's allowed us to thrive relatively well here in Canada. Second piece is education. Canada is known for its education program. It has the fourth best education system in the world, and it is one of the, I would say, the most educated country in the world. I believe it's Japan and Canada are the most educated country in the world, and this is why we do well.
Yeah.
Education really opens opportunities for everybody, and it allows us to raise our standard of conduct, of living, and so on. There are a lot of rich countries in natural resources. I would even say even in the Philippines, my home country, but since education is so scarce, and the access to higher education is so difficult, it's not doing well. Just in comparison, I'll use my home country again. Canada spends $20, relatively $20, for every a dollar that the Philippine government would spend, and I'm using relative cost there. For
Mm.
every $1 that the Philippine government spends on education, Canada spends $20
Hmm.
per person. So to me, our superpower as a country really is education. And this is why we have a great standard of living. We're able to sustain and manage and improve our infrastructure. Now we have our challenges as a country for sure, but
Right.
I truly believe that we can continue to make improvements. So to me, education is very important. This takes me to my last piece, which is career. Now, education in itself is great. It opens opportunities, but you also have to be able to adapt and work well in the Canadian environment, in the Canadian work the environment. So, to me, all those three things are key pillars of being able to thrive and do well here in Canada, and that's what RISEC tries to do, is to help in those three key areas.
Wow. That's very profound. I love the fact that it's settlement that you're starting with, and education and career. So the education point, I agree with you completely because, like you said, Canada is. I even think Canada is the most educated country, even before Japan. I'm not sure because the last time I checked,
We're number one, actually.
Canada,
I
yeah,
think in 2022, 2023, Canada's population, about 60% or just under 60% of its adult population have a post-secondary education.
education.
And yeah, we're above everybody else, above Germany, above the United States, and our education system is ranked fourth best in the world.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, and that could also be due to the fact that, immigrants come with at least postgraduate education level, like when a typical immigrant would come with a degree most most of the time. I know some other people also come through different routes. There are different pathways to come to Canada, but most people come through either the express entry route or through international student route, which means if you're coming through the express entry route, you probably have at least bachelor's degree or even master's degree. And if you don't have that, you are coming as an international student, eventually you're going to get your degree. So it all adds up and makes Canada one of the most educated countries in the world. Beautiful.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, one that's a big factor for us for sure.
Yeah. Good one for Canada. Nice. Okay. So you've been interacting with different immigrants over the years. You may not have experienced the struggle, but you've witnessed some of their struggles. What do you think are the most common struggles that immigrants go through, especially the new ones that land in maybe within the first 2, 3 years? What are their typical struggles?
So I'm going to talk on the perspective of the international students because that's where we had the most contact and through my wife's business. The number one struggle that we've seen, and this is way before it started hitting the news, is the settlement part, specifically housing.
Hmm.
Keep in mind that Canada seemed to have opened the floodgates in international student programs without any checks and balances. So right now, the population of Canada, in Canada alone, our population of international students is 2.3% of our overall population, which is significant.
That's like
2.3%.
7%. 2.3.
It
Did you say 2.3%?
2.3 or 2.6 is the population of I believe not sorry, not international students but of new immigrants in
New
general,
immigrants. Hmm.
which
That's
is quite
significant.
significant,
Right.
right? So that's a big strain in our resources,
And
the,
infrastructure.
and infrastructure. That's right, and healthcare. Okay,
Hmm.
because keep in mind when a new immigrant comes to Canada, they don't just bring themselves and then they stop with that. They bring in their family and extended family, and they
Correct.
will need housing. They will need careers. They will need to be able to use our healthcare system. So the main struggle that our international students face is, where will I live? Now, some international students are fortunate enough to have family members. Some of them are fortunate enough to have friends of families who will host them while they study. But then what happens after they study? They will still need to find a place to stay. So
Hmm.
now you have all these international students that are graduating who are going to stay on their postgraduate work permit, who may want to explore the rest of Canada, but now they can't because they can't find the proper housing.
Hmm.
So the number one challenge I would say right now is affordable housing for international students, and I think I would say by and large for the new immigrants, that's going to be a big problem because if you look at the housing prices, especially when you're here in Western Canada, the housing prices have been increasing over the years. That's going to be difficult to afford as a renter, as somebody who's just starting out. So it takes me back to what I was saying. It's great because this entry level jobs give them a lifeline, right? But it's also difficult for them because a lot of their money go to their housing. So I would say that's the biggest challenge at the moment.
Hmm. Thank you. And I understand what you're trying to say. I think you made a lot of sense in that regard about the housing. Well, I think things are likely to get better, and I think the government they are putting in a lot of effort and trying to streamline the process and kind of structure it in a better way. Because you use the word floodgate, so I think they are now shutting the gates. They are still bringing in immigrants, but not at the same pace as they were doing in the last 2, 3 years. Yeah, and that's a very valid point.
Yeah,
So,
so that change is actually very important because Canada now is, like I said, Canada is a very welcoming country. We're very kind people.
yeah,
We love to do things for others. We're known as a great country, great people, but we also have to be careful that we don't, we
absolutely.
don't open too many. So now Canada is becoming very strategic in bringing in the type of international students that we need, which is great. We're still open to international students. We're still bringing in new immigrants, but we're just saying, okay, guys, we have a lot at the moment. We're gonna restructure it so that it's a bit
Right.
more manageable for us. It's not that we don't like you, right? It's
Yeah.
just that if you come here and you suffer, then it's not gonna be a good experience. So I would say with the latest changes, probably in 2 3 years, Canada will open up again and bring in more international students. But right now, we have a lot of catching up to do, especially on the housing side.
Mm, yeah, that's correct. So let's talk about the career part. And I have two questions for you. For the career part, those immigrants that you see that do very well in their career, maybe within the space of 3, 4, 5 years, they've settled in and they are growing in their careers. What do you think? Do you think they have some traits that really help them in launching their careers and building it in a very short while, settling in their career?
Yeah, absolutely. I think though, I would say the number one trait of the newcomers who have done well in terms of getting their career in Canada are those who do a bit more, those who make themselves visible, uh, and I would even say those who do volunteering jobs, right?
Hmm.
Because the volunteerism do three things. One, it allows you to connect with the local in a meaningful way. You're out giving back, so you become visible. Those become your network. They become the people who advocate for you and say, "Oh, you know what? I know Paul. We've worked on this project. He's an amazing guy." Right? Something that you wouldn't get if you were just coming here and you're not out there. You're just waiting for a job. So the number one trait I would say are those who add a bit more, who give a bit more to the community right away. So I actually encourage all newcomers and especially our international students to look for a volunteer opportunity. It could be with a shelter, or it could be with the refugee organizations, or it could be with the city hall. Pick where you want to volunteer because they will take you. There are organizations who will take you, and volunteerism is one way to really get visibility, and also you can put that on your resume. The second trait that I see that from newcomers who do well are those who continually improve themselves here in Canada. There are a lot of courses that will help you get become a professional here in Canada. Here in Calgary, for example, we have an organization called CRIAC, Calgary Region Immigrant Employment Council. And what they do is they pair up professionals who just recently arrived and pair them up with professionals here who are working in their industry.
Oh,
And it's a
wow.
free service. It is a free service. Why wouldn't you take it? I mentioned CRIAC because I mentored several people from CRIAC, and they are
Okay.
amazing individuals, and they got connected with potential employers. So to me, it's those who give back, those who continually enhance themselves. And the last one, to me, action always creates results. And the more action you do, right, the more action you take, the more results you will get. So
Mm,
keep going out there, keep putting your name out, take action every day, call up people when you meet somebody in your area. Take the opportunity to connect with them, have coffee with them. Canadians love coffee. That's why Tim Hortons is not gonna go out of business anytime soon. Everywhere I go, there's Tim
unlikely.
Hortons. I'm like, and there is lineup. So it tells you that we're a very open society. We love to connect. So take action, and those are the ones who will eventually get to the top, or not get to the top right away, but those are the ones who will do well in their career.
Oh, wow. This has been a very valuable conversation. Thank you so much, Abel. So, if you are listening to me right now and you've not subscribed to the Thriving Immigrant podcast, please hit the subscribe button, subscribe. And if you know someone that you think will benefit from this insightful conversation, please share this episode with them and let's build a thriving community together. So, Abel, thank you for mentioning those points. You talked about volunteering, and I know very well that yes, volunteering can really help, and Canadians are big on that. Culturally, like for me coming from Nigeria, I'm not really sure if you're really big on volunteering. So sometimes when we come here, it looks like something very strange to us. So volunteering, very important. You also talked about personal development, like upskilling yourself, not just being redundant, like. And as it stands right now, technology is changing a lot of things. AI is changing a lot of things. So if you are not upskilling, you are just going to wake up someday and you're going to be let go. So then lastly, you also talked about action,
Taking action. That's right.
taking
Yeah.
taking action. Yeah, because it's one thing to have the knowledge, it's another thing to implement the knowledge. So a lot of people hear a lot of things, but they don't take action. Thank you so much. Those are very valid points. Let's talk briefly about your entrepreneurship journey. I know you did, I don't know how many years you did the regular 9 to 5. At some point, you decided to pivot into entrepreneurship. How is entrepreneurship in Canada? For someone who wants to start a business, what would you tell the person?
For somebody who's starting a business, going into entrepreneurship, the first advice I would say is it's not the same thing. Um, Business and business theories, they're great for general knowledge. Entrepreneurship is quite different. It's a difficult and different ball game altogether. Entrepreneurship, it has more to do with your willingness and drive more so than knowledge.
Hmm.
When you're taking a business course, you're increasing your knowledge, which is great, but a lot of that you can find online now. I'm not saying it's not irrelevant. Of course, it's very relevant to be educated, to know the systems that are in place, how things work. For example, for accounting and finance, marketing, and what are the rules and regulations around marketing. You want to be able to know those things so you can effectively navigate in the business world. But to be an entrepreneur, it's a very different ball game. It's not as easy as people say it is, and there's a lot of stress and a lot of I would say a lot of sleepless nights, especially if you're just starting out and you're jumping to it. 100%. My recommendation is before you go into entrepreneurship, whatever it is, work with somebody who's been there
Hmm.
and be taught by them, observe them. This is where you can work for free. I always say that's the tuition of life, as I call it. There's nothing free. There's a tuition of life. You're getting something out of it, which is experience. If you can,
Absolutely.
if let's say you want to go into finance and you can find somebody who's got a firm, and you say to them, look, I'll do whatever bookkeeping, I'll take notes, whatever it is, and I'll do it for 2 months, and you don't have to pay me. I'm doing it as my own personal experience. If they will let you do that, then that's great, because at the end of the day, in the long term, that's going to serve you. And maybe they might like what you do and how you do things, that they might actually hire you. Now, I would recommend going with an organization like RISEC, so you have that third party company that can try to guide you and help you when you do that kind of stuff. There's a lot of immigrant associations that will help you get an internship job or some form of experience job. But I will say before you jump into entrepreneurship, to really know what you're getting into.
Hmm.
Knowledge is now. They say knowledge is power. It's actually knowledge will will save you. It will save you time. It will cost you money, or it will save you money. It will reduce the risk. And I think that's a big thing too. There's a big risk. So if you're starting out an entrepreneur, if you can save up as much as you can, understand that it's going to be a very long winter. You're getting into a situation where, and again, it depends on the industry. I'm
Right.
talking if it's a difficult industry, like let's say one of the top three industries, finance, construction, and retail, like you're putting out a retail shop or something like this, then you really have to be prepared. And before jumping into it, you have to have the resources. And the last thing I would say about being an entrepreneur is network. You gotta
Hmm.
have the network. Can't do it alone. Not in Canada anyway. You probably heard this. Net worth
Is
is
your
your
network.
network is your net worth. It's absolutely true. It's
Hmm.
absolutely true, because tomorrow you may run out of cash. Who are you gonna call? The banks won't process anything for you within 24 hours. But you
Hmm.
might call on that buddy of yours who know what you're doing, and who's you chatted to for so many times that they trust you and say, look, you know what? I'll give you a lifeline. Here's $5,000. Get things going. Give it back in two, 3, 4 months. Here's our write up, here's an interest if you wanna agree on that. But having those kind of network groups, and also knowing people around you who can support you is very important. uh, One last thing I want to add as well is, before you do something, you always have to think about the bottom line. Okay,
Hmm.
because entrepreneurship is about business, it's about making money at the end of the day. So the question to ask is this going to get me closer into making money?
Hmm.
Because without money, it's like swimming without oxygen. Pretty soon, pretty soon somebody's gonna give or something's gonna give, right? So the difference between learning business, it's great to know all that theory, it's great to know all that knowledge. I think it just gives you a lot more confidence and a lot more information that will allow you to navigate through the hurdles and hoops of and maybe challenges of having a business. But in terms of being an entrepreneur, it's a lot of personal drive, a lot of networking. I would say a lot of really self-studying and learning what you're getting into. And the other one too is, if you're a single person going entrepreneurship, that's that's easy. But if you have a
Hmm.
family, you really have to talk to your spouse
Hmm.
or to your children about it, because they will get impacted whether you like it or not. You take your home, you take your work with you take your entrepreneurship endeavors with you, and most likely a lot of the times they will, if you're having a bad day, they will end up suffering from it. So you want to make sure that you talk to your family, that they know what's happening, being transparent with them. And I would even say, prayer is a big thing. um,
Yeah.
when you're an entrepreneur, to me that is that is the most uh, I would say it's one of the most intense way to test your faith, so to speak,
Hmm.
is to go in there and jump without your parachute, and building it along the way, so to speak. So to me, it is a test of faith. So prayer, doing doing a lot of spiritual work is also going to help out significantly.
Wow. Abel, this last one, you said a whole lot, so much wisdom. And you talked about social wealth. You ended it with spiritual wealth. Because when you were talking about networking, it was just social wealth that was coming into my head. Because truly, as an entrepreneur, you're going to find yourself in situations where you will need help of people. And you also talked about mentorship, very important. What's the point going into a business where you don't need someone, where you don't have someone to hold your hand? You want to take how many years to learn the business, and you want to learn it on your own? Yeah, so you made a lot of this is like a masterclass on its own. And the last one where you talked about the importance of carrying your family along, I just wanted to chip in this one too, because as a single person, the stakes are not as high as a family person. Because you- you- if you decide to go into entrepreneurship, of course, if you're a single person, your bills may not be as much as the bills of a family person. Look, for a family man, maybe you have three kids, you need to take care of your family. You can't just make some decisions. If your bills are not being paid for, you have to. But as a single person, you have some privileges because the stakes are not as high for you as a family person. So those are very valid points. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. Just before I let you go, so I usually ask my guests this question: what's the most powerful piece of advice that you have ever received? And it doesn't have to be related to business or career, just any powerful piece of advice that you received.
I would say the most powerful piece of advice that I received would be the advice from my grandfather when he arrived here in Canada, and we told him. He asked us, actually. He says, "Are we staying here? Is this going to be our new home, or are we going back home?" Meaning the Philippines. And we said, "This is our home. This is our home now. Canada is our home now. We're going to establish ourselves here, and our future generations are going to stay here." And I saw a bit of sadness in my grandpa's eyes, because and it makes I can understand, because all our lives we've lived in the Philippines, and our ancestors are there, and that's really our home country. But now that we've decided to become a part of Canada, becoming our home now, meaning letting go of what's happening in the Philippines and focusing our strength and energy and mindset in our new society. He was sad, but then he said something that has had an impact on me and continues to do so. He said, you better earn the land where you will be buried. And so to me, it's now that I'm here in Canada, do what you can, do give as much as you can to it from your volunteerism. Just do your best in this country to represent it, to contribute to it, to make it a great country. Because at the end of the day, I think we all need to deserve the land that we will be buried in. And if that's in Canada, then I think we have to give it our very best. So that would be my final advice and
Wow.
my main advice to your listeners.
Wow. Wow. That was powerful. That was the first time. I don't think I've ever heard it that way before. There's a way you said it, of course, from your grandfather is coming from a place of wisdom. Thank you for sharing all that. It's been an amazing time with you, Abel, on the Thriving Immigrant podcast. Do you have any last word, or how can people contact you, or how can they become a member if they want to join or if they want to do anything with RISEC? How can they contact you?
Yes. Yeah, so they can visit our website at www.risec-canada.org. So that's risec-canada.org. And when they go into the website, there is a volunteer section. We have a lot of positions that can be filled, and you don't need to be just in Calgary. You can be anywhere in Canada, and you
Oh,
can you
great.
can volunteer. So it's not limited to Alberta. We actually have a lot of volunteers out east from Nova Scotia all the way to Moncton, to Toronto. So, and it's
Ontario.
great. Everything is done online.
Oh, that sounds good. Right. Okay. Thank you so much, Abel, for sharing your time with us. Thank you for all the gems you've dropped. Thank you for sharing your wisdom because you are talking from a space of wisdom, for sharing your experience. And thank you for what you are doing for the immigrant community. Thank you for being a thriving immigrant. Thank you for not just seeing yourself as a secondary immigrant because you really don't have the first-hand experience of the pain or the struggle of the typical immigrant, but you still went ahead to show your passion and to try to make the journey easier for coming immigrants. And that's very commendable. Thank you for what you are doing. So
Thank you, Paul.
this is where we call it a day on this particular episode of the Thriving Immigrant podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for listening. And if you've not subscribed, please subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can get notified when new episodes are being released. And share this with someone so we can build a thriving community one day at a time. Till I come your way again, stay thriving.